Yeah, everybody's heard me talk about China before, so I don't know if I have a whole lot of new things to say, although we did see some pretty neat things this year. There's always something when you travel that can be difficult. Sometimes it's the food, often it's the food. Harking back to the Korea with their little live, some kind of sea creatures that they served me. Said it was a great delicacy, except for I noticed that only the person who ordered it and me were the only two people who ate one. We each ate one. This one was a little different. We seem to not be quite welcome where we've everywhere we went. So we'll get into that though. When I fly into China, I've got a good friend in China, Lu Gang, who usually comes here for a week in the spring pretty often, right in the middle of all of our busy season, and so I get to drive him around. But he's great because he takes me around a lot around Shanghai. He's from Shanghai, and there's a new botanic garden started in 2010 called Qinshan Botanic Garden. Now I went there in 2009 before it was open, and it wasn't anywhere close to being open. They were opening it in 2010. I remember asking them, what are you going to do if you're not ready? Because they had a big world exposition there, and they said, oh, we'll just bring in more people. When they talk about bringing in more people in China, they're talking about bringing in another 10 or 20,000. And I always wonder, because they said this whole site, there's a quarry, and there were 3 villages there. And I think to myself, what is a village? A village outside of Shanghai is probably the size of Raleigh, and they moved all the people away. But it's this amazing, amazing place. I've gotten to know it quite well because we go there. That's how I often start my trips in China. Because the Qinshan Botanic Garden is very interested in working with us on plant collecting, and it's also the headquarters of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, who we work with as well. It's pretty amazing. They've got these 2 big kind of, fish-like conservatories, which is really neat. You see on the top all those little triangles. Those all open and close automatically to vent the thing. It's amazing what they could do there. And they're really playing with some cool plants. My buddy Lu Gang had worked at the Shanghai Botanic Garden, and then ran a nursery for many years. Still runs a nursery, but he comes out and he consults in their nursery. They call him Papa Lu because he's always there fussing at him like a dad. But he was showing us some very cool things that they're doing, them inducing mutations. They had a couple of different tetrapanics that they had gotten variegated. Told them to get cuttings. I want cuttings as soon as they can. But really, when we go there, a lot of what we do is spend time at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and that's one of the. When I go to China, when I go to Taiwan, when I go to these other places, I really just want to get out in the woods. I don't want to spend time having dinners with people and chatting with people and nodding solemnly over really bad coffee. But we do that a lot. This is Benji, who I've worked with quite a bit. He's the curator of the herbarium at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. He likes all his plants dead and put away in cabinets like that, pressed flat. So he'll go and we'll plant with a couple little fruits on there, and he'll want that to press flat. I want it to get the seeds out of it. So he usually wins out on those things. But we were going to a different area than I'd gone to before. A lot of my colleagues, I say, Eastern China, Southern China, it's too tropical. There's nothing there. People have been collecting there for years and years. And I keep pointing out that everybody keeps going to Yunnan and collecting. And I've had great collecting along Guangdong and in Zhejiang and Anhui. So we were going to this area. This is the Wuyi Mountains, Qinshan. And it's kind of an interesting area. It's a little bit hilly, but mostly flat here. And then it goes up, and the highest peak, the mountains were right along Jiangxi and Fujian province. The highest peak, Huanggang, there is 7,000 feet. So when you think about that, that's pretty high. That's higher than the highest point east of the Mississippi in the U.S. So when people say it's all tropical, they forget that when you go up mountains, you actually do get some hardiness. we had been warned before we went. I was traveling there with Dan Hinckley, Scott McMahon from Atlanta Botanic Garden, and Ozzie Johnson from Atlanta, and then Benji and another gardener from Qinshan. And we had been warned going in that it's very difficult to get up in the high areas of the Wuyi Mountains because this is the first high point in China close to Taiwan. So if you're not familiar with it, Taiwan and the mainland China have some issues. You got the People's Republic of China, and then you have the Republic of China, and depending on who you talk to, they are all one country or two countries. So there are a lot of military bases up on the mountainside of the Wuyi Mountains facing Taiwan. So we rely on our Chinese partners. We rely on folks like Benji to get us permits to go there. So Benji did. Benji got us all our permits, got all the paperwork, got it all together. It's all very official. If you get paperwork in China, there's a stack about inch and a half thick. Everything was stamped and signed and thumbprinted and all of that. It's all very, very official. So we took a train from Shanghai here down to Qinshan. And drove out to the mountains. It's interesting, we stopped for lunch in some little town between Qinshan, somewhere here in the mountains, and it was just a little town. Got some food, a little outdoor cafe kind of place, a lot of flies, a lot of oil, a lot of hot sauce and everything. That way you can eat anything with enough hot sauce. But we wanted to pick up some fruit. It's always good to have some fruit. Some oranges and bananas, things you can peel are always good. You don't have to wash off. And so we're getting stuff, and we're trying to pay this guy. This is a roadside vendor. Doesn't have a permanent stand. He's just there with kind of a little motorcycle thing, and all these different fruits out in front of him. No cash. He doesn't take cash. All he takes is the phone. They have an app called WeChat, and you pay for everything that way. You transfer money between people. It's like Facebook, Apple Pay, Twitter. I don't know what all in one app, and that's what everybody's using in China now. So we're out in really what I would consider kind of the boondocks of China. And they're going cashless out there, paying for everything with their phones. Crazy. So we get there that night and get up early the next morning. We're at the Qinshan National Nature Reserve, which sounds really nice. And we get up. It's dark when we get in, so you can't really see anything. We're all exhausted. We've been flying in and all that kind of thing. Look out the hotel, and it's this beautiful grounds out there and filled with osmanthus. There's like all these osmanthus out here just flowering. Oh, it was amazing. And get out and have a little breakfast and walk down the road, and you're gonna go down and there's a trail going up there. Benji knows where we're going. He scoped it out. So we get going, and there's this little like mini arboretum of things that we're gonna see up in the mountainside, out kind of in this little park area. Things like Toria jackii. Isn't that amazing? Look at those needles are about 6 inches long. Amazing. Turnstromia quanxiense. Oh man, I'd never even heard of that. Alyssium minwaense. I'm really into Alyssium now because deer don't eat them. And this was a new one on me. Great big leaves. I'd love to see what the flowers look like. All kinds of weird things. Even weird boxwoods that I'd never seen before. I'm not sure what it is, but some of those leaves were 3 inches long on that boxwood. Very cool stuff, and so our mouths are drooling. We're ready to go up that mountain. So we're all oohing and eyeing over these plants, and there was a bunch of stuff out there. And I look over and I see Benji having a animated conversation with the local police, and that's never good. And he's going back and forth, and it's getting more and more animated. It's funny because Benji's about this tall, and the policeman was, almost my height. So he's like looking up at him, and he's just right, going. And I see him pulling out all the paperwork. He's got this, inch and a half thick pile of paperwork in his backpack, He's pulling it out and he's pointing at it and he's flipping through it and he's pointing at it. And then he gets on the phone and he's on the phone, he's trying to hand the phone to the policeman. The policeman won't have it. About 45 minutes later, he comes back and says, "We have to leave. No Westerners allowed." We said, "But we have all the paperwork." "No Westerners allowed." So we had to go pack up with the policeman standing there glaring at us the entire time and drive out. It broke my heart. And on the way out even, we're looking and there's all kinds of cool stuff. There's mahonias growing on the side of the road. This was a new one for me, Hanciola exerta. You ever grown that, Tony? No. Isn't that pretty? Oh man, so excited about this stuff. Polygonatums, I don't know what kind it is, but look at the fruit stalk, the flower fruit stalk. It was about 4 inches long, this long thing. Really beautiful stuff. But where I got really excited was this. You know, we have a national redbud collection. I love redbuds. This is one that I've wanted to collect in the wild. Problem with redbuds are, if you get them from any kind of cultivated source, if you get seed, they cross. They are the most promiscuous plants. Most of them are functionally self-sterile. So if you get seed on them, it's often because they've crossed. So we have grown a plant with this name. It was not the right plant. Thick, leathery leaves, and you see they're not heart-shaped. They're almost rhomboid. They've got these big obtuse bases there. So excited, and we're doing, going on with this. Benji gets a phone call. It's the police asking why he is not out the gate at the bottom of the mountain yet. I mean, they were on top of us. So we left, and we should have. If we were just traveling, we probably would have just enjoyed it, because the Wuyi Mountains are a UNESCO national cultural and national site, historic site. And at the base of, kind of down low, there's this area they call the Nine Bent Stream or Nine Bent River, which goes through this incredible karst topography that just winds around that you go through. I mean, it is spectacular. There's all this calligraphy on the walls, and you ride on these little bamboo boats. Although, you know what happens when you get 4 fat Americans sitting in one of those bamboo boats? It sinks really low. You gotta have waterproof shoes when you're riding on there, which is great, except for we're there for collecting plants, and this is down in the subtropics. There is nothing we want there. Well, trying to drown our sorrows in the tea. This is, Souchong Lapsang tea. This is where that comes from, is from the Wuyi Mountains. And another tea they call Red Road tea. I can't remember the Chinese name, but it's a very famous area for its tea. It tastes like, bitter water to me. I drink plenty of tea, but I'm definitely not a connoisseur. And we sat around that table and we tried about 12 different types of tea. And I think we got a little buzz going. We decided there's no way we can stay in this area. They won't let us up the mountains. There's nothing we want down low. Scrap all our plans and let's go to the next place we're going right then. So we packed it in and jumped on a flight. It's great flying in China. You can fly anywhere from one place in China to another place in China for about $100 to $200. It is so cheap. You get on sea trip and boom, go. So we go up to Qinshan, which is the farthest north I've ever been in China. Because we're going up there to go to the Qinling Mountains, which are kind of, there's mountain ranges that go east-west down here, and then it gets kind of low. There's some mountains that come down in here, and then of course Tibet goes all up. And then some mountains, the Qinlings, which go right through here. Hadn't been to that area, so we go to Qinshan, which is beautiful. Qinshan is one of the oldest cities in the world that's still operating. It's one of the 4 ancient capitals of China. It's been around since like the 11th century BCE, and it's amazing. Our hotel was right by this. This is the Bell Temple. It's the first place that Islam came to China. So there's a huge mosque there as well. This big drum tower. It's really cool. And the whole old part of the city is behind these massive Ming Dynasty walls. It's kind of this big square, and this is right smack in the center. So, you know, we're in the city. There are no plants in the city, so we ate Shaanxi. Let me go back. Let me show you this map. This is something, I guess I hadn't paid enough attention to the map before. I don't know if you noticed this, but you've got Shaanxi and Shaanxi. And we did more who's on first with, so what's the difference? Shaanxi and Shaanxi. And they said, no, it's Shaanxi, Shaanxi. So, all right, so I think I got Shaanxi and Shaanxi. No. Shaanxi, Shaanxi. I still don't know what the difference between the two is, but they are nothing alike. They do not sound anything alike to anybody in China. There's no confusion there with anybody. I don't know. But in Shaanxi, with double A's, they're known for some of their foods. This is the bang bang noodles. So they call it bang bang noodles. It should be bang bang noodle, because each of those noodles is about 6 feet long. It is. It's one noodle. It's like they sometimes call them belt noodles. They're these kind of thick, a little bit chewy noodles, and there's just one of them. And watch them make it. They pull them out and stretch it and double it over and beat it on a table and stretch it out some more. And so you get this one noodle and this spicy sauce. They're really good. I like them a lot. They're a little bit difficult to eat, but they're good. The other big delicacy there that you see all over are these sandwiches. I cannot remember what they're called. Starts with an R. Ramjui, something like that, which traditionally is pork that's simmered for like 20 hours in 20 different spices, and then they put it on this flat unleavened bread. And with apologies to the Duke or Earl of Sandwich or whoever, they were breaking these back in 220 BCE, so they predated the sandwich made by the Earl of Sandwich by many centuries. So they think these are maybe the oldest sandwiches around, and they're really good, except for that bread's terrible. But the Muslims make them. They do it without pork. They do it with chicken or beef. But you get them all over. That was actually for about 5 days in one of the places we stayed just south of Qinshan. That's what we had for breakfast every morning. Was one of those sandwiches. So while we're in Qinshan, we're waiting for Donglin Zhang, who's a professor at University of Georgia, who's from China, to come visit us. So we had an opportunity to go see the terracotta warriors, which was very cool for me because I go to these amazing places. I'll come back and my wife will say, "Did you see this? Did you see this? Did you see this?" I'm like, "No, I was in the woods. I didn't see any of that." So it's kind of cool seeing an actual tourist site in China. And it is crazy. It is insane. So they estimate that in multiple pits on this area, the whole necropolis site is 38 square miles. 38 square miles. But the main part with the emperor, so it's the tomb of the Emperor Qin. He is the first person who unified all of China. So he's the first emperor. There were dynasties before him, but they were all had their own little pieces. He was the first guy, 220 or so BCE, who unified China. And as soon as he did that, he started building his tomb. So they estimate that there's 8,000 warriors there. There's, I think 120 chariots with 500 some horses, 150 cavalry horses, and then there's a whole bunch of like ministers and acrobats and strongmen and all kinds of other things in there. It is bonkers. I mean, this guy was he's quite full of himself. So they're this is kind of this is the main army, and there's three kind of pits that they've started uncovering. This is the main army where they're just shoulder to shoulder, and there's just tons and tons of them all. And originally there would have been like reed matting over all these. It's just, there's so many of them. And then there are kind of the nicer areas where you have the generals and the higher ranking people, and you see it's kind of a nicer, it's supposed to be like the summer palace there. But if you look carefully, you see a lot of these are missing their heads. They're made modular, and like different places would make different parts of them. So, and everything was stamped. So you can see that all these heads were made at this place, and all these hands were made here. And so there are about 10 different molds for the heads, but then they would customize each one. So every single one is different. Yeah, it's mind-boggling how many and how big that was. It's estimated, it was written, now this was written a century after the Emperor Qin was gone. A Chinese scholar wrote that at one point 700,000 artisans were working on all of this. And they still haven't opened up the emperor's tomb. It's still hermetically sealed, and the lore is, the history is that it's under a pond of mercury. And when they test soil nearby, there are extremely high levels of mercury around there. So that was to protect them, is under this lake of mercury. But they haven't actually gone in there. So, kind of like if you look at the old paintings in Europe, that look all dark and somber and things like that in the churches, if you talk to an art historian, they'll tell you they were brightly colored way back, a long time ago. All of the warriors were lacquered, brightly colored lacquer. So this is kind of representation of what they look like. But when they expose them to air, in about 15 seconds, all the lacquer starts curling up, and in 4 minutes, it is completely flakes off and is gone. There was a video in real time of a head that they had taken out. It was amazing how quickly it all happened. So there's a lot of it that they're just not uncovering. They're hoping for technology that will allow them to kind of save some of that. So they're studying what's uncovered, but not really uncovering a whole lot more right now. And a lot of it's been damaged. Things are all falling down, and everybody had real weapons out there, but some time ago those were taken away. Probably not long after it was built. But the detail is insane. Like the archers that are kneeling, they have different patterns on the bottoms of their sandals, with their foot's up. It's really it's very cool. So you can buy a lot out there. I don't know about the whole communist China thing, because they are the most capitalist society I have ever seen. Now, this whole outfit is made from one thing. Anybody know what it is? It's all trachycarpus. It's all windmill palm. Yeah. Hat to sandals. Does not look comfortable. A little itchy, but isn't that lovely? So after we left Jun, we were going to meet Donglin at closer to the Qinling Mountains, right by a spur of the Qinling Mountains. Donglin, like I said, is a professor at UGA, and all his graduate students come from China, and then they go back, and they're all at botanic gardens and universities all over the country, which is amazing, because at the end of our trip, we had his graduate student, former graduate students, her graduate students helping us clean seed. That was the best. I can imagine. But we're at this university, the Northwestern Agriculture and Forestry University, and they had a botanic garden with several museums, natural history museums. Anybody know what that building is? That's the entomology museum. That looks like a ladybug right there. It's very cool. The garden wasn't much to write home about, but the entomology museum was pretty neat. So we made some forays from there into the mountains, and I mean, this was about the first time we actually saw plants. And this is where collecting gets to be difficult. I mean, you see that and you're like, oh my gosh, look at all that seed. It's just gorgeous. But it's Viburnum dilatatum. We've got that. That's been collected 1 million times. It's all over the U.S. And so you walk on by things like that, and things like Ilex pernii. It's here in the U.S. Nobody wants it anyway. So what do? We bypass some of these really kind of cool things that we know are here already, aren't endangered, aren't, if people wanted to get them in the trade, they could. Nobody really does. Some people breed with it, but it's not going anywhere. But it was one of the first times I'd seen epimedium in the wild. It's just not a plant that I've seen a whole lot of in the places I've collected, which was kind of neat. And Decasnia, they call it charitably, they call it blue bean plant, but it's also called dead man's fingers. It's a surefire way of knowing whether or not if you see this, if you get fruit like this, pick it up off the ground, there are no monkeys around, because monkeys love them. It's kind of slimy on the inside with all the seeds, but it makes kind of doesn't make the most beautiful plant, but when it fruits, flowers are interesting, but when it fruits, it's really cool. And it was beautiful to get out in the mountains. I love getting out in the mountains here in North Carolina, in China, anywhere. And this was one of the most interesting things we saw. This is an orchid. And we saw it at first, thought it was an aspidistra. And Tony, did you ID this one? Or was it a different orchid?
Definitely an orchid.
Yeah, it's some sort of calanthe. And seed wasn't, the seed was all gone, but we saw it several times. I'm hoping we can get some seed next time we go. Because isn't that beautiful? Like that in the garden. And as we travel along, we were trying to get to a different area of the mountains, and went to another place. I told you I love seeing the red buds. So we go to an area, and there was a sign. It was kind of a tourist area. We walked along the stream, and then it got kind of up in the woods where the tourists didn't go as much. But there was a sign at the beginning that said this was, they called this the red bud forest. It was, their symbol of peace and love, and it was their main tree. And I thought, oh, cool. And they even had the Latin name, which is great. It's awesome when they actually have the names for things. And it's Cercis glabra. Like, great. I've learned a lot of Cercis glabra. Well, we go hiking in, and I'm seeing all these red bud leaves all over the ground. I can't find a red bud tree. And finally I realized that these trees that are this big around and are 60 feet tall are the red buds. Leaves were 12 inches across. It was amazing. Hadn't seen anything like that. So it's kind of hard to get a picture of a tree that's 60, 80 feet tall when you're in the woods. But this tree, you can see it's just loaded with fruit. It's amazing. That's the main overstory in this woods were red buds. You do a whole layered red bud. You got your Cercis glabra as your overstory, and then some of our Cercis canadensis, and then some little shrubby Cercis chinensis under there. I mean, wow, wouldn't that be nice? So I said it's kind of a touristy area. So you get up near the top, and then there's a cable car that gets you up even closer to the top. And it was starting to get dark, and it had been raining all day. It was ugly, and so we said, well, we'll take the cable car instead of walking up, and then we'll walk back down. Easy way to collect. Get a ride up and then walk down. And we go over, and I'm seeing this. I'm like, wow, what is that thing? We'd seen it on the hillsides. We get up to the top and start hiking and realize it's paper bark maple, which another plant I'd never seen in the wild. It's a beautiful garden plant. And as we get up there, the sky opened up, and it got sunny and beautiful, and the light just shining on that orange, shaggy bark. Really amazing. That's, it's great to bring the plants back, but to, bring those kind of memories back is amazing. So we go up the top, and there's this waterfall. You keep going up, and there's a big waterfall here, but you kind of see there's an arch there, and then another arch there, and then the third arch there. It kind of comes down and goes through all those arches before coming down, and then surrounded by paper bark maples. And continuing even farther, another plant that I've grown many times and never seen in the wild is the lacebark pine. Unfortunately, this is using my telephoto lens. It was way far away from us and up these sheer cliffs, and we fell prey to what I know not to do. I've done this enough times. We said, wow, look at that. There's a whole mountainside of lacebark pine. We'll see that again. We'll be able to collect it. Never say that, because you'll never see it again when you do that. But so we had spent some time there. That was kind of on this north side of the Qinshan Mountains, and it was okay collecting. It wasn't great, and so we said, let's go over to Gansu. We told one of the folks there in China said, there's a place called Moon Valley. Nobody's ever heard of. It comes in right into that western side of the Qinshan Mountains. Said it's very interesting. So said, okay. And drove out there. And we're getting there, we're getting close, and we're not quite to the mountains. We're driving along the road there, and we stop for the night. And we pick up our guide there. We just pick him up a car on the side of the road. I guess they had called each other. And he takes us to the hotel. He said, this is the only hotel that takes foreigners. So we go in, and Donglin, who is Chinese, like I said, and knows how things are there. A lot of times you get a really good veneer on everything. He says, I want to see the room, because the lobby's beautiful. This marble and everything. I want to see the room. Because a lot of times you get to the rooms and they're not very nice. So we go, it's Donglin, me, Scott, and one of our other Chinese guys. We go tromp it up, we look at a room, and it's gorgeous, it's a beautiful room. And we go back down, we say, all right, yeah, we want to stay here. And they say, no foreigners. Like, show us the room. So we leave, we go to the other hotel, which now our guide tells us, this is the only hotel that takes foreigners. Kind of a special permit to take foreigners. So this is the only hotel. And we go in and check in, no problem. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's as nice as any hotel you'd stay in anywhere. We go up, drop off all our stuff in our rooms, get a little cleaned up, go out to dinner, have a big dinner, cheer each other a lot of times, and drink a little bit, and come back, and it's getting close to 10 or so, 10:30. We walk in, and I see the person behind the desk come scurrying out toward us, and we should have broke into a run and gone for the elevator as quickly as we could then. And she comes and she says, no foreigners. So I don't know what happened between the time we checked in and had dinner, but so 11 o'clock at night, we're packing up our stuff and go to another hotel, which is not very nice at all. They had no problem with us as long as we paid. But we did get a good night's sleep. Now, I like most food, most places I go. I've had a few things that's not so good, but the one thing I cannot stand in Asia is Chinese breakfasts. I have told people about this before. I cannot stand breakfast in China. Breakfast to me is so easy, and there it is. Usually, you'll get some little steam trays of leftovers from the night before, so it'll be some vegetables, things like that. Maybe some weird bologna type stuff cut up. Some buns, steamed buns, which look really good, but they just taste like nothing. They taste like nothing. If you're really lucky, there'll be some boiled eggs, and if you're really, really lucky, you can convey to one of the people working there that you would like some salt with your boiled eggs. If you're unlucky, all they have is congee, which is rice porridge, and I could go on for about 20 minutes about how much I hate congee. It is terrible, terrible stuff. I'm going to start packing sugar with me so I can dump sugar in my congee and make it edible. Forget about palatable, make it edible. So I get up and go down to breakfast, expecting to find the worst. I think this is why they kicked us out. I think Scott was playing his bugle. That's why they kicked us out of those first two hotels. But I go, you can't really see that very well. But this is what is right next to the buffet tables. Now walk in, that's what's right in front of you when you walk in, are about 4 or 5 tanks of these big old hellbender salamanders. I mean, those things are like 3 feet long, and salamanders, slimy, I got family from Louisiana. If it has scales on it, it's edible, but that's a bit much for me. And 5 feet away is the buffet table. Luckily, we didn't get into that hotel till 11 o'clock, because if we had gotten in earlier and had dinner there, that's the delicacy of the area. And let me tell you, we would have been eating that. And it's, when it's a real delicacy, they use all of it. And the grosser the part is, the more of a delicacy it is. So I ate my congee and didn't complain about it that morning. That's what they need to do. So we go driving, we get farther out, we're getting out in the country, and we are starting to see some really cool plants. And our guide, as we come around the corner, says, we're driving up, says, our hotel is just around there. And we come around this corner, and there's this. And I think, oh my gosh. I am going to have fleas. If I'm lucky, that's all I'm going to leave with. But no, it was not that. We went right past that, and our hotel was actually right here. Freshly built, just been put up. We were the first Westerners who had ever stayed there. Got our picture taken. They just about had our picture framed and up on the wall before we left. But it had Wi-Fi. We're out in Moon Valley. Wi-Fi out there. It was amazing. And they great cooks. It was so good. And this is our view, from a little balcony outside our window. Isn't that nice? So we were walking into the woods the next day, go hiking through this valley, and our guide takes us, actually the guy in the hotel was showing us, getting us out to the trail, and he takes us by this other hotel that's being built. There's just a shell of a hotel, but behind there they have all these ponds where they're doing aquaculture. They had a bunch of sturgeon in one of these things. Have you ever seen a live sturgeon? They're like 6 feet long and the most prehistoric looking thing you've ever seen. And the water was dark. I don't know how deep it was, but they would come up and swim around and go back down. Oh, man. I don't need to eat one of those things after seeing it. Well, we're walking, and you see these beautiful patches of mountainside, like, this. And then down here, they've lost all their leaves, but this is all poplar. And I'm trying to figure this out, because that's not usually how hillsides look, where it's these patches like that. And it winds up that the Chinese government wants this to be a tourist area. And so what do they need for this to be a good tourist area? They need good fall color. So they will pay the farmers to not plant crops in areas that they've been farming, but to plant plants with fall color, trees with fall color. So they'll plant paperbark maples, or they'll plant poplars, or they'll plant Chinese horse chestnuts. But then they just go cut down some other area of the woods and start farming there. So, we're seeing this, and this is a plant where it's been newly planted. It's even hard to see, but there are trees all through here, young trees. And while they're waiting for those to grow, they'll plant underneath it until it shades it out too much. Can you tell what that crop is? It's blatillus. It's good for what ails you. Stop you bleeding, stop acne, it'll do all kinds of things. I haven't tried it, but that's what they tell me. But they do that, so there'll be these whole areas on mountainsides where it's gorgeous fall color in these big blocks. This is all bright red, this is all gold, this is... if we think bureaucracy is bad in the U.S., bureaucracy in China is much, much worse. But so we get out to where we're going, and we're going down this path through this valley, but this is what it looks like, what we're walking through. It turns into a little muddy path as we get farther and farther along. For about half a mile, we walked on there was a canal, a little concrete canal coming down from the mountain, and a lot of it was covered. You could just walk on top of these concrete covers. But then there were parts of it that would go on for 100 yards, where it was about 4 to 6 inches wide, and on one side there's a drop down the mountainside, and the other side is water rushing through. And once upon a time I would have felt happy doing that, and all I could think of was how far down the mountain will I be before I can get myself out of this river going through here. But we get out, and finally, kind of at the end of the path, we get here and we start walking down this valley. This is Moon Valley. You want to talk about a narrow valley. And we get there and they say, well, it's been raining and the river's high, so we might have to cross it. Okay, great. Nothing like crossing a mountain river in October. So we get out there and, it's knee deep. No big deal. Walk across, let my feet dry a little bit, put on my shoes and socks, great. We go a little farther and wade across and then walk, it's getting pretty deep there. And this thing, if you can see, this is a little pointy rock, and this is a little pointy rock. You know what happens when you put log on top of little pointy rocks? Back and forth. There was a little kid with us, the son of one of the guys, and he just scampered across that back and forth, and we're all barely making it across. There's Scott trying to make it. We kept telling him, don't stop, you can't stop. I did pretty good on the way back. I came so close to going in. Well, it winds up, we had to cross that river 6 times going up and 6 times going back, and every time we crossed, it got worse. You're hopping across boulders, going across these little rickety bridges. It was bad. You know, look, they should have nice smooth stones on the bottom of the river that's running that fast. No, those things were they were sharp. But we started getting past all those river crossings, and the plants got better and better. This is some sort of polygonatum that's just hanging down from this river, from this rock. I'd never seen it. Was like a Qinshan type, but with these really fat, wide leaves and then loaded with fruits. Can't wait to see what that actually looks like. But a lot of neat things like that. Another one that's whorled like that, but every one of these had a white stripe down the center of its leaves. Actually, the first time we saw it in a different area and it had been broken off right above the first set of leaves. And we thought it was some weird Paris that was growing, but it was a polygonatum. And you see it in there is a little disporum that was about waist high, with that just branched like crazy. Those fruit, liriopes and lyripogons, ophiopogons. Look at the fruit on that. Isn't that beautiful? It was exciting. Epimediums, epimedium leaf. It's kind of fudging. That was a young leaf, and that's when it comes out as a single leaf. When they go trifoliate, it gets a little bit smaller, but some pretty cool stuff. And I'm not a fern guy. I went collecting with Tony. He collected 5 of every single ferns we saw. Everywhere we went, there was there's 6 million ferns in Taiwan, and Tony got at least one of each of them. But this thing was like fish scales. It was silver, and it's fish scales. Even I had to collect that one. It's spores from that. And beauty berries. I have collected more beauty berries, and most of them are what we call bioplants, botanical interest only. A pretty beauty berry is gorgeous, but a lot of the ones in the wild are these big honking shrubs with little tiny fruits. This is a little 3-4 foot shrub with these big, bright fruits. That was the showiest beauty berry I've ever seen in the wild. That's another one I can't wait to see what it does. And Helwingias. This is a weird little plant where the fruits grow right in the center of the leaf. This is what Helwingia chinensis. That's with these very narrow leaves, and the fruits are wider than the leaves. And sometimes it would have 2 or 3 fruits right in the same spot. Gorgeous. Of course, hydrangeas, always hydrangeas, heteromelea. And probably my favorite plant, something in the Lauraceae family, a Macculus. Still don't know which one, but it had these bright red fruiting stalks and these big blue-black fruits on there. It's an evergreen tree. I really think that's a gorgeous little plant. And a little dogwood, a little shrubby dogwood, Cornus quinquenervis. I think, there's got one up here to give away. Beautiful fruits, but perfectly round little shrubs. Really exciting. Now, we weren't collecting oaks. Oaks, it takes special permits for to bring back acorns of oaks, so we weren't collecting those. But this had me scratching my head. When we were seeing these little oaks, it was a shrubby little thing with these spiny leaves, looked just like what you'd see in the Southwest and in dry parts of California and Texas, down into Mexico. It does not look like anything that should be growing in a wet evergreen forest. But there they were. There were several different species of these crazy little oaks there. And again, got to get back to my red buds. Not a very good picture, but this is one of those kind of holy grail plants. This is going to be a cold hardy, we think, Cercis racemosa, the wisteria flowered or chain flowered red bud. That's a red bud. And just wait. We'll get that going. We'll get in the hands of Denny. We'll put purple leaves on it, gold leaves on it, make it weep and turn over, roll over and beg. That's what I'm looking for. We've grown Cercis racemosa, but it tends to just not be a very good grower for us, not very hardy, not a very good plant. So if we can get one that really does well, it's hard to see in this, but some of those racines were approaching 8 inches long with the fruit on there. So right past that, we found some friends. We actually got them to help us collect it. These guys live up in Moon Valley, so we were probably 5 hours up. Now, we were botanizing, so if you've been walking at a good steady pace, it's probably 3 hours away from the 3 houses and hotel by where we were staying. And they live out there for 6 months a year with beehives, getting honey. And this is it. So there's 4 of these guys, and there's a woman in there. This is this little shed that the fire's inside there. It's like just smoky as can be. That's it. They sleep in there and everything in that little room for 6 months. All 5 of them. I do not know why. They're all very happy to see us. They cope with it. They drank a lot, especially this guy. He was very, very friendly. But so they all live in there. See what's in his hand? You know what that is? That's a cell phone. Yeah. See this? Cooking over a fire, living in this little lean-to thing for half the year, but by God, they got a solar panel so they can charge their phones. So they can use WeChat. They can go buy stuff on eBay or I do not know. But you know, we were in this little valley, and you know, you get out there and you're like, man, I've crossed this river. I've got cliffs on either side of me. I'm really bushwhacking it down this muddy path, and then your guides are strolling along behind you, you know, checking their status on WeChat. No Facebook in China, and you know, all of a sudden it kind of deflates you. You're like, well, maybe I'm not so far from civilization as I thought, as they're texting and making phone calls. You know, kind of one of those things that I always love to collect, but it's hard for people to. Hard sell, I guess, are vines. People just don't know what to do with vines. People are afraid of vines. You should grow a vine on every plant you have. You don't need a trellis, just let vines go through them. This is an evergreen clematis, and you see, so this is late October, and look at that. It's got these great big buds that are looking like they're ready to burst on this evergreen plant. You know, I don't know if they'll hold like that all winter, or if it really looked like it was going to flower during the winter. Just imagine how cool that could be. You know, or Cadsura, coccinea. Look at the fruits on that. Isn't that neat? I always try and figure out how much of stuff like that to bring back, because we grow it out and then nobody wants it because it's a vine and they don't know what to do with the vine. But that's another evergreen vine. It's beautiful. Or Schizandra, the magnolia vine. We've got some flowering in the lath house right now. It's beautiful. And then it forms these fruits. This is one of the most primitive plants around. And as an added bonus, if you grow Schizandra, you can make Schizandra liquor out of it. And you can see from Scott's face how good it is. So, you know, it sounds very glamorous to go out and plant hunt. You'll be a plant explorer. It sounds great, but this is the reality. I've got a little tiny suitcase with a couple of changes of clothes, so I stink real bad by the time it ends. You can always keep one outfit in a Ziploc bag that I can wear on the plane back home. But this is what the other suitcase looks like. It's paper towels and bags and sieves and things like that. And you know, this is what hotel rooms look like, just absolutely scattered, you know, with all the stuff. And every day you pack that stuff back up and put it back out. Got to get it all dried and cleaned before you come home. Although having graduate students help clean the seeds is very nice, especially when you've got about 50,000 redbud seeds to clean. You got all this and keep track of the records that go along with it, and try and identify it, and try and the whole 9 yards the whole time gets to be long. And the thing, and I've started putting this in every talk I give, because everyone, first question I get asked is, how can you bring this stuff back? There is a lot of red tape to get anything back into the United States from out of the country. You've got to have permits before you go from the U.S. You have to have plants inspected across the seas there. You got to have the plants inspected when they get back and sent on to you. Depending on what you're collecting, there are different permits. I generally just do a general permit, but I do have a CITES permit, so I could bring orchids could bring palms, could bring cycads, but then there's a lot of regulation on the back end. Once you get them here, people want to see them. There are some plants that are restricted, like say most anything in the, a lot of the things in the rose family, anything like crab apples and cherries and things like that are often restricted because we have crops here with those. So there are permits that you can do that, quarantine permits where you can grow it, but you got to keep them quarantined in a nursery area away from everything else, and they're inspected by inspectors regularly. And mostly we just don't mess with that because it's too big a pain to do. So we just do these permits. Everything gets shipped into the inspection station in Atlanta. They inspect it all, and then we'll ship it on to us. Sometimes it'll ship on to us. New Zealand, I sent a shipment of plants back. I was down there for a while. I sent a shipment back while I was halfway through the trip. Just never showed up. The other shipment that I sent came through fine, but sometimes that happens. Now this particular trip, I left during our plant giveaway. I don't know if people were here for the giveaway, but the staff here took a vote on voted with your dollars on whether I should come home or not. I will say the members of the Arboretum did not want me to come back. I was told to stay in China. So with any luck, you get back, you sow everything, you cross your fingers, and if you're lucky, you get some things that come up and grow and survive. If y'all are lucky, we get a lot of things that grow and survive, and we give them away. There, folks. So this was such a rich area that this October we're going back again to Moon Valley. We're going to stay at that same little hotel. There was good food there and no bed bugs and Wi-Fi, so we're going to go back there. And this time we're told, and it's always, it's always a little bit of a game of telephone when you're talking through interpreters and things like that. We're told that we can hike from one end of Moon Valley all the way out the other end in just 3 days. So we're going to give ourselves 5 days because we go slow looking at plants. But the plan is to hike all the way through there and come out the other side and see what we get, and take some detours into some of those little valleys on the side, and then come around and come down either in the south side of the Qinshan Mountains and go in there a little bit. We're told our guide knows another place that's very good that nobody ever comes to. So we're really excited about that. I think it's going to be great collecting because it's that perfect combination of cold enough to really be hardy for us, but still warm enough that there's a lot of diversity. A lot of these things that are kind of, if you get a little bit low, it starts to be almost subtropical, and then you get up high again, and it's perfectly hardy. So very exciting spot for us. I will put a plug out there. We do have sponsorships for plant exploration. I can put you in touch with the right people if you're interested in that. But very excited about that. So, happy to answer questions. It was a great trip. Other than getting kicked out of multiple places. The bad. Normally I'd say the worst part is getting kicked out of hotels a couple times, but getting kicked off an entire mountain was pretty rough for us. So, if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Do you share the seeds with the people who go on the trip, or do you each do your own?
That's a great question. If you didn't hear that, do we share the seeds with everybody who goes on the trip, or do we each do our own? It depends on the collectors. We tend to share. Sometimes there would be just a few of something. Like I got most of the red bud seed because Denny Werner sows tens of thousands of red bud seeds. We know if we have good seed, it's coming up if we have Denny helping us out. Sometimes like I'll bring fern spores back and I'll give them to Tony to deal with. And then 2 years later he comes back and he's like, hey, I got those ferns for you. And at that point I'll have forgotten I gave them to him. It's very exciting, like Christmas. And there are some things that they do a really good job in Atlanta with. So, it'll go with Scott. Mostly we split it up because we have different facilities, different ways of growing things. We're big believers in if we have fresh seed, we sow it, or at least some of it, immediately. And a lot of times we'll get it pop up immediately. That'll happen with fresh seed. Whereas if you let it go dormant, it needs a cold period. Scott sows all of his seed outside, so it gets that cold period and then comes up in the spring. I'm too anxious for that. Anything that doesn't come up within a couple weeks, then it goes, we put it outside or put it in cold, a cooler or something like that to chill it. But yeah, we try and split it up. And on this trip, Scott and I went the whole trip. It started off with Dan there for a little while. He had to leave. Ozzy was there. Ozzy Johnson was there with us for a little bit. He had to leave when we left Qian. So, you know, even with those folks, we'll share what we have when we have a lot of it, even though they weren't on the whole trip. And then we'll often share material out. If I had gotten Acer Gricium seed, which I did not, there was no seed on any of those trees, any of the papermark maples, I would have shared it with Tony Aiello at Morris Arboretum and with Chris Bachtel at Morton Arboretum, because they've been doing a lot of research with the genetics of paperbark maple. As it was, they've been looking for all the locations. This was the location they hadn't collected in where we saw it, so we were able to give them another location to go look for it. So it's, you know, it's not just the plants, it's the information. And then ideally, once we have plants, we share them pretty far and wide.
Why do you suppose they don't like you to take acorns?
Why do I suppose they don't like you to take acorns? Well, one, if oak disease comes in, that can be really devastating. That's all across our country. Oaks are a major tree. Acorns, often you can get little critters that get in there that you don't see the hole and they're inside there and you don't realize it. And maybe when you collect them, they've just gotten in there and they're real tiny and the acorns will still sink. They still seem like they're good seeds. By the time they get over here, that little critter is eating all the heart of that acorn out and is ready to come out, do some damage. There's some some oak diseases that are problems. There's some things that you just can't get at all. Anything in the Rutaceae family. The Rutaceae family is the family that oranges are in, that citrus is in. Forget seed, everything. Can't bring any of that in. So it's it just depends.
What was your very favorite plant that you collected on this trip?
My very favorite plant that I collected on this trip. Oh my goodness, that is so hard. It is probably that Cercis racemosa. That was pretty exciting for me. That was one of those early plants as a young plants person that I came across somebody growing. I bought it and it killed it, but it's just the whole idea of it was so exciting to me. So hopefully we'll have some that are going to grow well. Although that was one that for some reason I didn't wind up with any of the seed. That's all down in Atlanta, so I don't know how they're doing with it. It got me a little nervous.
Did you say how many days the trip was?
How many days was the trip? I don't remember. It was too long. It was close to 3 weeks, if it wasn't. It was very close to 3 weeks. That's too long. 2 weeks is good for me. I'm too old for 3 weeks. Scott left me, went to Thailand for a couple of days, and then to India for another week and a half, I think. He came back that time and said, never again, 2 weeks. I was like, I'm with you, 2 weeks. All right, well, thank y'all all very much.